We are excited and ready to go.
Was that a pun, by the way?
Oh, what did I say something and didn't even realize it was a pun?
Well, maybe you said I. Whoops.
Hey, there we go.
About that.
There's the old delay, John Bagnasco and his telephone. Hey, let's start again. Good morning. Welcome to Garden America. Happy Easter to one and all. I'm Brian Main, John Bagnasco, Tiger Palafox. We are back. It is Easter weekend. We trust you had a good Friday, and a happy Easter to you. Here in Southern California, guys, lots of rain. It is wet. Tiger, you talked about thunderstorms tomorrow.
Yeah, isn't that exciting that we're actually going to get a little bit of weather? I mean,
We like
not a
weather.
great weekend for having weather,
Right.
but at the same time, we like weather because we
never
get
get
it
weather
that often.
The easiest job in the world, being a weatherman in San Diego.
Good for the garden.
Oh,
It is good for the
excellent.
garden, absolutely.
These spurts.
Yeah.
Just a little soaking, sunny, little soaking.
Enough
sunny.
time to dry out.
24, by the way, is the number now. 24 gophers I've caught.
What?
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
You know what? We need to start a new feature.
And
the Gopher
no new
Update.
roses? Like, no, the gopher did not get. You
No.
had two
No.
or three last time.
Well, now it's one.
So
Because
two
two
recovered.
of the ones that I dug up, two of the ones the gophers got, no roots at all. And they're both coming back.
Nice.
So,
Well done.
and speaking of roses, I brought a Easter present for both you and Brian. Yours
Yeah.
is out in the car.
Right here.
What is
And
that?
it's a rose that is 50 years old because it came out in 1974. This is 2024.
Uh-huh.
So I thought 50 years, and I was dividing roses. So this is a floribunda called Marina.
Marina.
And it was
And you brought two of them?
Yeah, one for you, one for Tiger.
What?
And the
Wow.
it's a floribunda that is orange with yellow at the base. And the reason I
Wow.
thought you guys might like this rose, first of all, it does great in containers, so I thought Brian would like that.
I love it.
And it was also used as a florist rose, but it's fragrant, and most florist
Ooh.
roses are not fragrant,
Yeah.
right? So I think it'll be I think you'll like it.
I like it already.
Yeah,
How come there's two stems coming out of the soil? You say you divided it.
yeah.
Why? How does this grow that it doesn't have one stem?
I had a 5-gallon can that probably was about 6 years old. So I had all these. I mean, the can was full of stems, so I just took a saw.
Oh,
I
really? You just divided it? Huh?
Yeah.
Like actual.
I actually got 5 plants from it. So I've got one coming up in the rose auction that's going to be in 2 weeks.
John, you can conquer, but not very good at dividing. Or is that the other way around?
No. I
He
was
can
good
divide,
at
he can't
dividing.
conquer.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Not good at the conquering.
Yeah.
Right. So
That's
anyway,
cool.
I think you guys will like it. Leave it in the container for at least a year.
Because
Oh.
you just divided it
That's
this week.
beautiful.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah.
So if there's a little bit of leaf loss or droopiness,
Right. Yeah,
that's
you know that
normal.
it's because it. Sometimes I'll divide something with a jackhammer, but
Yeah.
on these I just used a saw.
Can we get a video of you jackhammering something?
We could.
A quick, I think 15 to 20 seconds would be enough entertainment.
Every
Yeah.
rose
Wouldn't you
I
like to see
planted
that?
up on the top of my property by the driveway, I had to use a jackhammer on.
It's still, the ground is so hard.
Doesn't
there.
that just shake your brain up?
No. I ended up getting an easier one to use. Tiger told me about it
Yeah.
Right.
because the one I was using I think weighed 300
60?
pounds.
or a 90-pound breaker.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
like your power hose
Yeah.
that you lent me. My gosh, that thing's heavy. It is heavy.
Oh.
So anyway, we are back. A happy
Yeah.
Easter weekend to you. Those on Biz Talk Radio, of course, listening to last week's show. Guest today, as always, who's that going to be, Tiger, for those that did not get the newsletter?
We're going to be talking with Scott Daigre with Tomatomania.
We've had him on
Right.
before.
Yeah, we have them usually every
Yeah.
year this time of year. Right. A little bit later this time of year, talk about tomatoes, see how the season's going, give us an update on some varieties. And
you
those
had
of you
the
that did get the newsletter,
Yes.
John had a great article about the first person to eat a tomato publicly.
Yes.
Because if you think about it, tomato is in the same family as solanum, which is also
Nightshade.
nightshade, which is a
Yeah.
very deadly
Right.
plant. So back in the day, they probably associated the two very closely.
They grew it as an ornamental, the tomato.
Just
Because you had the red fruit.
Yeah,
it was
it
kind
looked
of
pretty.
ornamental. Yeah,
And
it looked
the
pretty.
quote of the week ties in to what you're talking about, because we always get this question: is it a fruit? Is it a vegetable? And John's quote this week will clear that up.
Do you know who the quote was from, by the way? Do you know who Brian O'Driscoll was? He was a rugby player.
Oh,
I did not know that.
Yeah.
good philosopher, rugby player.
Yeah, you want to hear the quote while
Sure.
we're talking
While we're
about
talking about tomatoes?
Okay, he said that knowledge is knowing that a tomato's a fruit, but wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad.
It's perfect. It just sums it all up.
It is so good.
Now, the guy that ate the first tomato, I think you had this in the article. What year, what century was he? How far back do we go?
Oh,
1800s.
yeah.
Oh, not that far then,
Yeah,
really.
not that far back.
Well, if you think about it, like everybody else that ate the plant that looked like that died. So why would you do that?
You know, I always wondered the first person to ever taste something.
Oh, it's right.
And it's like, okay.
And you know what's kind of crazy about that too is that when you were the first person that probably ate some things, a lot of those people probably did get sick to some degree when they ate it first because your body didn't know what it was or how to react all the time to it. You know, it's kind of like when you go to another country even and you eat their food, sometimes it's a little too rich, a little too salty, a little too spicy for you, and then you get accustomed to it. So anytime you were the first to eat something, those people probably got a little bit of some stick, but then they powered through it.
The anticipation, you're waiting to see what's going to happen.
My wife told me yesterday that you can drink the water in Costa Rica.
Oh, yeah?
Or you can.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. Do we have to have...
I don't mean out of the river or anything, but...
With the Caymans?
What? Yeah, I was going to say, are you allergic to alligator poop or what?
No, well, you know, when you go to certain countries, they tell you don't drink the water, so you only use bottled water, right?
Yeah.
But
what about adapters? Are they on the same AC/DC? Do we have to, like,
Yes.
when you go to Europe?
No, you don't need
Do the same thing?
Yeah.
So all of our electronics will plug in easily?
Oh.
Will charge?
I didn't know that.
You didn't think of that, did you?
No. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, that's going to be April 21st to the 29th. We're talking Costa Rica. In fact, we had a lovely discussion about Costa Rica before the show. We're all excited to go.
Yep.
Tiger, myself, John Bagnasco, leaving the 21st, back on the 29th. A great itinerary, actually going down a river. Speaking of caimans and wildlife, to the left of you, to the right of you. Don't jump in the water. I think that's
you
the
going to
my
wear your
advice.
little safari outfit and then have like at Disneyland, like the little pop pistol?
Yep.
Watch out, everybody.
You know, I came up with a funny scenario that you go on, we're going down the river, right? And that they set this up where, like in Disneyland, where these natives come out of the jungles and stuff, and you think it's real because you're not expecting it. And Dana said, that's funny until somebody has a heart attack.
Yeah, true. It's the truth, right? It's
Yeah.
fun to scare people until someone does get hurt.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be like these river trips in Costa Rica. I mean, you're going to think it's fun until somebody gets eaten by piranhas.
Oh, jeez.
You know, we can talk about piranhas.
You know, you see those skeletons coming up out of the water all the time.
Yeah, where somebody dips themselves or a cow or something, and
Yeah.
2 seconds later they bring it up and it's
Yeah.
completely shredded.
You used to,
I love how we're painting our trip in really good light. Right
I know, really.
well, you know, we
guess
want to
getting
under promise and
cancellations.
over deliver.
Yeah.
Didn't you have a piranha at one time?
No, I never had
No?
a piranha. But you know,
Can you have a piranha in a fish tank?
well, let me. I think so. First of all, they're not as vicious as people make them out to be.
Right.
If you had a piranha in an aquarium and stuck your hand in there, they're not going to go after you. In fact, I saw somebody who actually cut their finger a little bit, then put it in there, and they didn't really react.
Yeah.
There was an old Dragnet show.
What about 1,000 piranhas?
There was an old Dragnet episode back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And they were trying to find where these people had stashed their jewelry. They had this big heist, right? They go to the person's house, Joe Friday, Officer Gannon, they're looking. They can't find it. I guess it's not here. And then they went into another room, at the same time looked back into the living room where the aquarium was, and there were piranhas in there.
Mm-hmm.
They had the jewelry stuffed in the aquarium.
Oh, yeah.
In the
Makes sense.
water, but underneath, thinking, oh, if somebody tries to get in here, the piranhas are going to, shred them, and which is a fallacy. But I thought that's very clever. Hide your jewelry in an aquarium in bags in an aquarium full of piranhas.
Perfect.
Hey, Lisa,
Talk about rabbit holes.
while we're talking about Costa Rica, Lisa says that, or has a question, can we do the radio show from there?
Yeah, we are going
We're going to try to do
Yeah.
something live on
We are.
Facebook, right?
Yep. Yeah, we are going to.
Good
try to do the
good
radio show.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I haven't locked in that yet because I'm still trying to figure out some of the details of where we'll be at that time and what's going on.
So I would assume we'd have to be like at a resort or hotel, someplace
Yeah.
that has good Wi-Fi, obviously.
Exactly. So
Don't expect a live show going down the river interviewing caimans.
No, that might be it. We could do a Facebook Live where we just have our phone and do that. Maybe
We can do that and then post it.
Yeah.
So bring your phone, John. Get good at taking videos.
Right.
Hey, look at the time. It is time for our first break of the day. First segment almost in the history books. Second segment coming up with our guest. Scott's going to be with us, and Scott's been with us before last year at this time. So do stay with us. Those on Biz Talk Radio are going to take a break. This show, as always, brought to us by our good friends at Fertiloom, supporting us, supporting Garden America. Back after these messages. Wow. Back after these messages. Stay with us. Okay, we are back from the break. Thank you, those on Biz Talk Radio. This, of course, a pre-recorded show from last week. Thank you for joining us, those on Facebook Live. Scott is ready to go, but a couple of things to do first, John.
Well, yeah, our buddy John Domenici from Southland Sod says that he can honestly say the drought is over. Do you think so?
I think so, and that's a good point to make, especially here in Southern California, where, rain is usually front-page news. And quite a storm brewing and quite a storm tomorrow, John.
And he makes a good point that I agree with 100%. He said water shouldn't be wasted, but use it efficiently.
Absolutely.
You can grow whatever you want. Just don't waste your water, but use it efficiently. And then Tanya said that she believed that all parts of the tomato were poisonous except the fruit, and that's incorrect. The tomato leaves actually are not poisonous, even though I've heard the same thing, Tanya. People say that. But there's some chefs that have actually used tomato leaves in their cooking.
Yeah. Are the stems poisonous?
Oh, I don't know about the stems.
No? Oh, all right. Well,
but I would think the stems weren't if the leaves
If the leaves were not?
If
okay,
the leaves
you just
aren't,
said the leaves specifically. I didn't know if it was like,
well,
what is that chart? Was it?
That graph?
No, the plant that you cook and the leaf is edible, but the stem is not charred. Rutabaga?
No, you're thinking about rhubarb.
Rhubarb, yes.
And it's the opposite.
Oh,
the leaves are poisonous.
Good thing I don't cook rhubarb.
Right. Anyone out there listening, do not eat rhubarb leaves.
Okay, with that in mind,
All
let's speaking of tomatoes and such, we're going to dive in with Scott Tiger. Let's do it.
Yeah. Hey, Scott. Good morning. One of our favorite guests joining the program, Scott with Tomatomania. To talk about what's happening this tomato season. Already got a number of events under your belt, and I believe you have the weekend off this weekend, right, Scott?
Tiger, good morning. Good morning, guys. Yes, we have the weekend off. How great is that? I mean, it's odd, but it feels good.
You've been going strong for a month or so now, and you still have more events to come. First, tell our listeners a little bit about Tomatomania that are not familiar with your program.
Thank you, and hi, everybody. Tomatomania started at an amazing nursery in Pasadena in the 1900s, and I was lucky enough to work there and help build this event that showcased heirloom tomatoes. And in 2001, I took the event on the road, and so we travel around. We've actually done, Tiger. We've been trying to refine this. We've operated in 5 states and over 30 cities, trying to find the right combination of things to make this event go. But we celebrate heirloom tomatoes, hybrid tomatoes, all you can imagine, and we grow out an amazing variety of rare things that you can't find everywhere else, and we showcase those in pop-ups now throughout Southern California in the springtime. So you're right. We've been on the road for a month.
Yeah, and some of the cool things that Scott creates or helps get out there in the public are kind of a tomato for every situation, right? I mean, that is the hard thing. When you go into a garden center sometimes and you're looking for tomatoes, they might have 5, 10 varieties. They got a cherry, they got a slicing tomato, they got a saucing tomato, they got a few other varieties in there, but that's kind of it. When you put on your events, you have hundreds of varieties. So if somebody says, I want a yellow cherry tomato that's going to get 3 feet tall, you have a yellow cherry tomato that's going to get 3 feet tall. Like,
we sure hope. We sure hope so. That is what we want. Everybody wants something different, and we embrace the more different it is, the better we like it. And so we're out there in front trying to find the newest, the wildest, the tastiest, all of that stuff.
Oh, that didn't sound good.
Yeah, I think we just dropped the call.
Hey, Scott. Yeah, we dropped him.
All right, well.
You guys talk amongst yourselves.
We will figure this out.
I'll get Scott back on the phone. No worries, because you guys always have a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Hey, I do want to, since we are going to be trying to get Scott back on the phone here, I do want to go back to John Domenici's comment about the drought and how we've learned to save our water. And that is probably one of the most unique things, I think, that has come out of the drought is this idea that trying to recharge groundwater situations or to try to keep water on property and not just send it down a drainage river and out into the ocean, but actually trying to keep it in the land, because we're noticing that when we keep water on property, the trees, the shrubs, all those deep-rooted items have water sources through the summertime. Also, when it does rain again, it's a faster recharge. So, I think that we're going to see a lot of evolution of water conservation over the years. Did we get Scott back on?
Scott is back on, ready to go.
All right. All right, Scott,
sorry about that.
No,
it's
no
all right.
worries.
Yeah. But I think right before you had cut off, you were just talking about some of the you have a variety for everybody, right?
Well, we try. We certainly try. And every zone, tomatoes tend to be very universal, but there are specific needs. We find that in our area, and I'm sure there are those, around the country and everywhere who have specific needs. We sure try to address that, and when we can, we do.
Yeah, and it's kind of a fun atmosphere too, because when you go to a Tomatomania event, there's all kinds of people there. And the one thing I notice, and we talk about this on the program with gardeners, is that everybody loves to share their experience. So as you're walking around cruising through tomatoes, if you lift one up, chances are there's someone next to you that says, "Oh, I've tried that one before," and
exactly.
it was good, or it was bad.
We learn a lot at each of our events. We find out about how wow, you did it that way, you did it in that size pot, you did it in that location. It's kind of an amazing thing. We learn as much from everybody else as hopefully they learn from us, and then we can share that. And it is. You're correct, Tiger. It's a sale, it's an event, but it's also a community.
Yeah.
And the value, there's so much value in that knowledge and just fun in the experience.
Yeah, exactly. And, tomatoes is one of those plants that I kind of just feel everybody grows, everybody loves them, so.
Even if you're not a gardener, you try to grow a tomato.
Yeah. And
it's true. Some people, the only thing they grow in a given year is tomato plants, right? And we love that, whether you're growing everything or not.
Yeah. Hey, Scott. One of the things I was thinking of when you had the program at our nursery there in Mission Hills,
right,
was the just the concept that you have these people with all of these varieties out there, and you do your due diligence growing some and kind of figuring out ones that you want to promote that year and ones that you're like, we're going to maybe take a break from that one. How many, varieties have you kind of gone through over the years that have really piqued like a high interest and then maybe like fallen off? Because, one that I remember when I first started in the industry was the Radiator Charlie Mortgage Lifter. And I remember when that one came out, it was like nobody, that was the biggest tomato ever, and now you kind of don't really see it, right?
Isn't that crazy? Well, look, there's tomato fashion, just like in every industry, right? There's a fashion. There's today. There's whatever. There's this historical perspective. And I think what's happened, Tiger, is we've just found so much more.
Yeah.
In other words, I always credit Black Krim with being the tomato that launched Tomatomania. It was wild. It was from another world. It was a different color. It was a different taste. And today, there's still a lot of demand for that tomato, but there are so many other glorious black tomatoes that we found in the interim that a lot of people have just tried something else. It's not that, I guess it did go out of fashion. It certainly didn't become a bad tomato because it's amazing.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, we're going to have to take a break right now, too. Sorry to cut you off, but when we get back, we'll continue chatting with Scott Daigre with Tomatomania.
Of course, do stay with us. You got a question for Scott or one of us, let us know right there. Comment section on our Facebook page as we take a break for Biz Talk Radio. Welcome to Garden America, talking with Scott. We're talking tomatoes today. Brian Main, John Bagnasco, Tiger Palafox. Messages coming your way on Biz Talk Radio. Back from the break, those on Biz Talk Radio, we appreciate you tuning in each and every week. If you want to watch us live, hear us live, go to our Facebook page, Garden America Radio Show, every Saturday morning, 8 o'clock on the West Coast, Eastern Time Zone, 11 o'clock. You can watch us live, interact, ask questions, and really be a part of the show. Until then, though, keep listening to Biz Talk Radio. We're going to keep talking about tomatoes. Tiger?
Yeah, and before the break, Scott was just telling us that Black Krim was one of the tomatoes that launched Tomatomania because it was just so different.
So different, so new.
Than what everybody else was used to. And now, like you're saying, Black Krim, it's good, but there's so much else out there. There's so many more different ones out there. And maybe they've taken Black Krim and modified it. Now it's sweeter, juicier, sour. I don't know. But there's a lot of, other ones out there.
If we were to ask Scott his favorite tomato, I'm sure he could not answer that, right, Scott? There's no way to answer
that. That's a tough one. You'd have to ask me again in 15 minutes, and it might change.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You never know.
Like asking me what my favorite rose is.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I like them all, right? On a given day, I like anyone is my favorite, and we love it's like kind of the pursuit too. I like finding my next favorite. That's part of the game, and we love that.
We have a question for actually Brian here on the program, but it associates with tomato. One of our guests, Veronica. What was the name of the tomato that Brian talked about being so good? I think it was an intermediate cherry. Now, was that Sun Sugar or was it?
Well, I think it was Sun Sugar, but since then, John, you've discovered it.
Well, there's other sweet tomatoes, and maybe Scott has some ideas on tomatoes that
Scott,
are sweeter, but the one you grew was Sun Sugar.
Yeah, loved it. Scott, what about Sun Sugar? What about sweeter tomatoes than Sun Sugar?
Well, Sun Sugar's an amazing place. It's an amazing tomato, and it's related to Sun Gold. It's a little more golden than that orange that is the world's favorite tomato. And you'll always find the sweetness in the cherries. That's where the Brix ratings are. That's where you get sugar, right? I think, guys, there's so many good sweet cherries. It's odd to find the opposite, where you can't find sugar there. But I think one of the new sensations in cherries is one called Bronze Torch. Have you ever grown it?
Wasn't that the tomato of the year last year?
Bingo. Yes.
Yeah.
It was actually 2 years ago.
2 years.
We took this. We got this tomato in our trials, and I kid you not, the first tomato we tested, and it was early because it's a nice early variety, but the first bite of the first time we ever trialed that, we just went, okay, this game's over. This is tomato of the year next year. And the rest of the summer, bore that out. And it's a grape. It's an elongated cherry with a pointed end. It is dark, sort of that new dusky red, sort of chocolatey red that's so popular in tomatoes right now, with green stripes. So what's not to like? It's unique. It's beautiful. It's a little larger than the average bear, right? And I got to tell you, the taste is so round and full, and yes, sweet. That it's the next. It is a sensation, but I think it's the next thing.
Yeah, and those tomatoes are so fun to put into salads and things because
to surprise people.
The flavor is amazing, but then the look is really neat.
Yeah.
The look is amazing, and you can't believe the flavor it packs. It's kind of it is terrific.
Yeah.
Rick from Idaho says that he was at the first Tomatomania at Hortico Nursery.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wonder what
Rick,
that was like.
oh my gosh, that's amazing to hear. You guys,
Yeah.
we have T-shirts, right, from each of our event years, and people wear T-shirts from 1996 all the time.
Oh, I love it.
It's just crazy when they come to our events, and there is a lot of history, and I think it's typical of this genre because that's why we honor in an heirloom tomato, for example, right?
Yeah.
We're honoring their history, and now this event has a history, and Rick, we're very grateful for that, and I'm so glad you reached out.
That first T-shirt is a collector's item because it says "Made in America."
It probably does, and you're right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. You know, we've been on the road, you guys, 25 years next year. We are in our flagship sale's been going on for 24. We celebrate 25 years next year, and the T-shirt will have to be a special occasion next year.
For sure. Hey, you mentioned Bronze Torch being tomato of the year. What was this year's, or what is this year's tomato of the year?
This year's tomato of the year is one called Harvard Square. It's a green. It is I always called it a smaller beefsteak, but at a tasting this summer, that was disproven when somebody arrived with a bucket of huge ones. So depending on where you grow, it will be a nice-sized beefsteak. It's green with some red striping, even some metallic and gold striping, right, in some places and in some areas. On the inside, it's green with some gold and red splashes through it. And if you've ever tasted a Berkeley tie-dye, the taste is in that family. And so, yes, we love that. And what we found about this one is that it's hugely prolific, right? And it is, again, it's everything you want. It's a sturdy plant. It's beautiful. It's tasty, and it's really, really unique. So a little bit more tang and excitement in the green tomatoes kind of makes a difference for some people, and it's a different taste sensation. But we've watched this for 3 or 4 years in trials and always had an affection for it, and this year decided to make it our star.
And do you know where it came from? I mean, Harvard Square. That's kind of a unique
Tiger,
name.
I don't know its origin. It's not, and I could go back there, and it doesn't come to me right now.
Okay.
It was developed at Yale University, if I'm not mistaken.
John, let's back up.
We have a lot of questions.
Yeah, let's back up, John, on the
Scott.
questions. Scott, stand by, Scott. A lot of questions coming your way. John, go ahead.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Marina, which is should get her question answered since I just brought you guys a rose called
Yeah,
Marina.
exactly.
Yeah, you sure did.
She wants to know if you have heard of a tomato called Waimea cherry.
Waimea.
I have not, but I'm intrigued. I love this idea. We get so many inquiries about new things, and I get seeds sent to me, and I get all this. But I haven't heard of that one, and I'd love to know more. So I will check it out.
Yeah, Waimea, like Waimea.
Yeah, like Waimea Bay in Hawaii.
Yeah, Waimea
Hawaii,
cherry.
yeah, Hawaii. You know that our tomato of the year a few years ago, Lava Flow, came from Hawaii. So it's an interesting,
That's a great name.
interesting journey now. I'm going to look that up. Thank you, Marina.
Veronica has one more question. She says that she remembers an indeterminate cherry from Israel, but she can't remember the name. And she said it was a good producer and wants to know if it's still available. I can't think.
Well, I can't think of it. I don't know. Obviously, if we don't have the name, there is a beefsteak called Israel that's quite spectacular, and it's been in our collection off and on for the last few years. But I don't know of a. Again, I can't call up that cherry that might have been from there. There are obviously cherries and amazing tomatoes from all over the world. Again, this is what we celebrate, and I love knowing that everybody has these special things from their particular regions. Whether they're, sometimes we find that names just happen, and it is another tomato somewhere else, but people adopt it and give it whatever the story. We love that, and we love the regionality of so much of this stuff.
Hey, Marina commented that the Waimea cherry was a wild Hawaiian cherry, and it was currant size. So that really does sound interesting.
Well, it follows that it's small and currant size if it was wild. That's like the first tomato that was found or the first documented so many centuries ago, right? That's exciting.
Tanya, who's in San Jose,
right,
wants to know how she can find out where the next Tomatomania is going to be.
That's very sweet. Thank you, Tanya. Tomatomania.com is our base, and obviously talks about our talks about our season. We are primarily Southern California right now. We've been as far north in California as Sonoma through the years, and as our tour has kind of developed. And we're always looking for new spaces. So who knows? Maybe we need to come up to San Jose. We have tried so much. And even though we have a long season, we kind of hit the borders of that. We're always looking for new spaces, Tanya. So hit us up and let us know where you think we might we might be comfortable in your community. We love this idea.
Yeah, Tanya is involved in gardening up in that area, so she may want to work something out with you.
Yeah, there's wonderful.
Well, look,
nurseries
we
up
do
there,
all
too.
sorts of we have all sorts of amazing partners of every kind. You know, I love the story that guys now we're primarily at arboretums or garden stores or farm stands and like that. But I've had the Tomatomania at a party store before, so we've done it all. and we look forward to the next step. Always looking forward to the next place we can show up and excite people and share the good stuff.
Yeah.
Scott in Pennsylvania is in Zone 6 and wonders if you might have some recommendations for people on the East Coast.
Hey, before you answer that question, Scott, we are going to have to take a break in about like 30 to 40 seconds, so I didn't want you to get too far into the discussion on the East Coast, because I'm sure you can go down a rabbit hole. But
we can take a break now.
Yeah, we're going to take a break, Scott. When we get back, we'll answer that question.
Yeah, then Scott can start from scratch without any interruptions.
Yeah.
Okay, great questions. Those on Facebook Live, keep those questions coming from Scott. Tomatoes, great subject. We're all excited about tomatoes. New varieties we've never heard of before. So Scott's going to be back with us. We are going to take a break. This show, of course, sponsored by Fertilome. And these messages brought to you by our good friends on Biz Talk Radio. Okay, we are back from the break. By the way, those on Biz Talk Radio, this is the final segment of hour number 1. News coming up top of the hour. We come back at 6 minutes after. Hopefully you can carry us, or your market does carry us, 1 or both hours. That would be nice. You don't miss anything that way. We continue. Again, last segment for Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live. We keep on rolling along. So let's get back into it, Tiger, with Scott, so we can keep the conversation concerning tomatoes rolling.
Yeah, Scott was just about to answer one of the questions that we had come from our Facebook listeners about growing tomatoes more on the East Coast, right?
Right. Well, look, guys, we're really lucky because this amazing fruit is pretty universal. Now, yes, we have different growing seasons, right? We plant at different times. Our days are longer or shorter based on where we live in the United States or anywhere. But look, tomatoes are incredibly willing just about everywhere. Yes, some may do better here than there, whether it's a warmer or a cooler situation. But I think we've been on the East Coast trying this event, and we learned so much when we were out there. We did White Flower Farm events for a few years. We were in Maryland and in the Boston area. And we found that people did the basic. We showcased the same varieties. We really did. And just like people in Southern California, wherever you are on the East Coast or wherever, you're going to have to experiment a little bit. But I think you will find that if you use good practice, you follow the rules basically, get the basics in terms of sun, water, irrigation, and feeding correct, and do all that right. Tomatoes will be surprisingly willing for you. So I think it takes some experimentation, but I think you get out there and find what you want to eat, basically, right?
Right.
And go for it. I don't think there's a cherry or a beefsteak or whatever, Scott, that will work better in Pennsylvania or on the East Coast than it does in Louisiana
Yeah.
But you got to try it. And again, the core, those varieties that we hear the most about, those varieties that are the center of both the hybrid and the heirloom sort of heritage of tomatoes should work for you. And so get it all right, experiment, and you have to find out what's available or what's most willing in your area. And I think you'll be surprised because a lot of them will.
Yeah. And when it comes to growing tomatoes, Scott, like the thing that people think about is number one, temperatures, right? Because that's all about, when it'll set fruit, when it won't set fruit.
Yes.
And then, they love water. So, keep it well watered, and you're good to go.
Consistently, right?
And then you can grow them in a container. So, like you say, like wherever you're at, it doesn't matter about soil conditions or anything because you just put them in a pot, put it next to your house. Maybe that keeps it cooler. Maybe that keeps it warmer. But you can find a plant that's going to do well there and actually produce fruit for you.
Absolutely. And as gardeners, you learn these lessons every day.
Yeah.
And whether it's a tomato or a lavender or a daisy, right? Where things work, how they work, where they work best. And the tomato is the same. And there are some limitations. The coast gives growers a limitation. Mountains or short summers give people limitations. But you work within those, and you'll find tomatoes extremely universal and willing if you get the basics right.
I have 3 tomato volunteers on my property right now. So I have this one.
Well, look, you gotta love that.
Wow.
Yeah, I have this one plant that I've just left, and I don't even. It's actually 2 plants. It's the kind of a cherry tomato, and then there was another one that I planted from you last year, and I don't know the name on it now. They grew together. They grew together, okay? And I just left it, and it's still sitting there. But now I have 3 other plants that have popped up throughout my property that I have no clue how they got to where they are or what they do. So I'm waiting to see. I love growing just random volunteer tomatoes in my yard and seeing what they turn into.
Well, it can be kind of maddening because you don't know what they are.
Yeah.
But they're off. I get stories all the time about it's the best thing in the garden or something, or whatever.
Exactly.
So I am all about volunteers. I say let that go. Figure out what it is, and hopefully you enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Originally I'm from Michigan, right? So we used to use tomatoes to tell us when the last frost date was.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was the day after you planted your tomatoes.
Yeah. It's like when you wash your car, it rains
I've been
the
there,
next
done
day.
that, even in Southern California.
Exactly. Hey, Rick in Idaho wants to know if there's any products that you feel can be added to the soil that enhance the flavor of tomatoes.
I don't know about the flavor, Rick. I think the health of your soil definitely relates then to the health of your plant, which then hopefully gives you the best tomato, the best tasting tomato possible, right? So when you're talking about building soils, it's all about compost. It's all about organic materials, and not just when you go plant your tomatoes. Building your soil all year long and just throwing stuff into that area where you know you're going to grow next year, right? Whether it's a manure-based product, whether it's a hay even that you're layering out in the garden or straw or clippings of some sort. Compost and composted materials are always the best thing to make a best-tasting tomato. And then, oddly, I think one of the other things, too, Rick, is sort of no matter what you're growing, no matter where you're growing, right, water or irrigation tends to be one of the things we screw up in the garden. And oftentimes at the end of the season, when we get most nervous about that tomato that's ripening and we want to take care of that beautiful bundle of, gorgeous beefsteaks that are on the plants, we tend to over-irrigate. And in the end of the season, the plant is putting a lot of that water into fruit. And so you may be diluting flavor. So good farmers, I know in California and elsewhere, as the summer goes along, are not watering more, they're watering less. Or they're cutting off water so that all that wonderful taste in the tomato is well-balanced and rich and concentrated, and that's where you get the best tomato taste. So, again, no matter what you're growing, watch your irrigation at the end of the season and eat that tomato when it's ripe, when it's fully colored and softening. You pick it today, it's going to be a deeper color and softer in 2 days, right?
Yeah.
So if you do that, wait for it, and that's when you get that best tomato taste. And I think it's not so much about what you added to the soil, but that helps. And then it gets you to the point where you can make a decision that gets you that primo taste.
Hey, it's funny you mentioned the water situation because I remember we had a conversation, I think at the end of last year, with these weird rains in Southern California. We had all these late rains, and we were talking about your farm that you have up in Ojai, about how the fruit production and the water and all of that. And then we just didn't know what was going to happen this season, this spring. So have you've started your garden again, right? So you've already started it, and now the season's kicking off. Have you noticed any kind of carryover from last year's rains into this year in your farm? Because your farm is a more of a farm, not like just I have some tomato plants. But when we get back from the break, I want to hear how your season is starting off. Okay, Scott?
Absolutely. Scott, hang in there. Stay with us. Those on Biz Talk Radio News coming up. And again, hopefully you can hear us second hour on the show. Your market carries us, hopefully. on Biz Talk Radio because we're back at 6 minutes after. So, again, do stay with us as we continue to talk about tomatoes. News coming up on Biz Talk. And, again, those on Facebook Live, we are coming right back with Scott. Do stay with us. I'm Brian Main. John Begnasco, Tiger Palafox here on Garden America on a rainy day here in Southern California. We are back from the break. Those on Biz Talk Radio, those on Facebook Live, thank you for joining us here on Garden America as we continue on this Easter weekend. Those on Biz Talk Radio, a pre-recorded show from last week to get the legalities out of the way. We continue Tomatomania, Tomatoes, Tiger with Scott.
Yeah, and right before the break, I was asking Scott a question about how his farm is starting off. Since last year we had such a heavy water year, and then this year we're starting off, with a good amount of rain as well. That on your farm up there, have you started things, and how are things going?
Well, I haven't, Tiger. I'm gone, right? So we're on the road this last month. So I've got way too many tomato seedlings, all my choices so far, sitting and waiting to be planted. Our last frost date in Ojai is on or about the 10th of the month of April.
Okay.
So we're not there yet. And I've relative to John's, the point that was made just a minute ago, I've lost fields of tomatoes by planting too early up here, and I do have to pay attention to that. So I haven't yet started. We are prepping like crazy, and in fact making lists and enriching soils and doing all of that. But we're only getting prepped, and I'll do that within the next 2 weeks to get mine, to get our test garden started. I've got a test garden in Santa Ynez that won't go in for another 3 weeks. And then out in Camarillo, which is a little kinder than where I am, we could be in, but we're not yet. We're going to give it just a little bit more time. Again, add to those soils and get things in. It looks to be mid to the third week of April, and that'll be my start. But relative to your question, I think we had such a weird year last year that people said, "Oh my God, my summer was terrible." But guess what? All my tomatoes hung on, and I had an amazing fall and winter, which is really weird. And we're looking at 2 wet winters in a row. Yes, it's kind of thrown us for a loop. We're used to these hot springs where we can start early and get things, early summer and all of that. But these last few years have been really strange. And so a very slow, very cool early summer, as you point out last year, lent itself to plants that got really well situated. And after the big heat, when things started to cool down and get really, really perfect for tomatoes, they produced through the fall. We heard more of that this spring and continue to hear more of that than ever before. So long seasons, only because it didn't start early. It just kept going late.
And, John, we've got a lot of questions to get to. Let's catch up.
We do. Connie wanted to know if there's any tomatoes that deer or groundhogs won't eat.
Oh, Connie, I wish.
Yeah.
I wish we would. It's that one with wire around it, and wire under it. That's the one that the deer and the groundhogs won't get. And for us, the gophers and the raccoons and the possums and everything, the squirrels. Let's not forget those guys.
Yeah,
so look, it's tough. Dealing with critters is tough in the garden, and a wire enclosure is I think, the only way you're going to get it done. Yeah. And I know that's a lot of work and expense and time and all of that. But if you can't grow on another side of the house or in another location or in something in a yard where the dogs are or something like that, dealing with critters is really, really tough. But it is often the only way we get tomatoes. We talk about picking time, and I talked just a minute ago about picking a tomato when it's ripe. And many of you who are listening, probably can't wait that long. Because I always say squirrels know that tomato's ripe or ripening 15 minutes before you do.
Yeah.
And so you find a tomato that begins to show some color, take that or clip it off the plant, don't rip it, and put it in the kitchen or a cool place for a while, and it's going to ripen up. That's how many people with critter issues have to operate. And I get pictures through the summer of kitchen counters completely covered with basically green tomatoes that are just starting to grow to show some color. So it often takes, again, a lot of work and expense. But, yes, it's perhaps the toughest thing we deal with in gardens today, and tomatoes.
Well, since you mentioned green tomatoes, Veronica in Spring Valley wants to know if you have recommendations for an indeterminate green beefsteak that is an abundant producer.
Harvard
Square.
Gosh.
Well, look, when it gets to the beefsteaks, you're not going to get as many as you get with cherries, right? The bigger the tomatoes, the fewer you get. We want those ones. We want those ones that are prolific. I'm showcasing one this year called Tasty Evergreen that we really have liked in trials. We think it's great. You're looking at, there are beautiful new greens in the Cherokee lines There's one called Cherokee Lime Stripes that we have been very excited about. That's in my group waiting to get planted. And so all these beautiful greens. I think Harvard Square definitely qualifies. I think it's amazing. And then you have standards like Aunt Ruby's German green, and Ananas Noir, black pineapple, that is also green, shows some red. Berkeley tie-dye. These are amazing green tomatoes. I think your job in terms of making it prolific is obviously, again, back to the basics. Make sure everything's right. Your soil, your irrigation, your siting, all of that. Give it what it needs, and you will get what that plant gets. Oftentimes we talk about pinching and pruning with plants, and more we're finding that beefsteaks will benefit from a little pruning so that they have more energy to produce more fruit. And I think I don't prune much because I'm a lazy gardener. I'll admit that, and I plant way too many tomatoes. But I think also in terms of practice, a little pruning on some of those, a little pruning and pinching on some of those beefsteaks may help you with the energy or encourage that plant to put its energy into fruit rather than more leaves.
Yeah, and the sturdiness of the plant, right? Like in the sense of you see those stems really bulk up and, be able to transfer more water and nutrients through the plant. Like, obviously you're going to cage it and support it, but, you'll see some real strong stems when you start doing the pinching and kind of pruning and lacing. So
yeah, and I'm bad at that. And look, it's a big job. Let's be honest. But if you're doing a few plants and your goal is to get more fruit, which is all our goals, right? In the beefsteak realm, if you really want large and you really want, again, the energy to go where you want it, that can be a good idea.
And also for the greens, it's good to be able to do that because then you can see the fruit. The one thing I have a problem with the greens is that you can't see the fruit. All of a sudden I look, I'm like, whoa, look at this thing. I didn't know that was there.
Though, Tiger. You got to think of it as it's like finding it's an Easter egg hunt.
Exactly.
For, timely and all that.
Exactly.
There you go.
All right, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to comment also that Veronica makes green tomato jam. That's why she
how beautiful.
wants those. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
One of Brian's favorite listeners, Dana.
Yeah, my wife, Scott, so here we go.
But and you may not know this because it's a supermarket item, but there's a tomato that's being marketed as Twilight.
Twilight tomatoes. Have you heard of that, Scott?
I have not heard of that one. We hear about grocery tomatoes all the time, of course, because this is what so many of us are eating. But I don't know Twilight. Is that
it's Nature Sweet?
Do we know? Is that where you guys? Where's it being sold?
In Nature Sweet, Vons and Walmart, I believe. It's called Nature Sweet.
Okay.
Yeah, Nature Sweet's the
company.
company.
I know Nature Sweet. I know Nature Sweet for sure. What color is it?
It's a red tomato, I do believe.
Yeah.
No kidding.
And it's a smaller tomato.
My ears are up now. I got to find it.
Okay.
Now, could this be one of those situations, though, where they named it Twilight, but that's not the actual tomato? Kind of like the cutie.
Absolutely.
The cutie mandarin.
Absolutely.
There is no cutie mandarin.
I say my ears are up. I may never see that seed anywhere. It may never be ordered. It may never be offered to the garden market. So there's that as well.
Yeah.
So, we don't get it. Kind of thing, right? It's a market situation. We've seen garden things that we grew in the past sort of captured for the grocery market. That happens all the time, and vice versa, where we never get what all of a sudden we can buy in the supermarket.
Yeah, she said it's red and purple.
It's just industry.
Red and purple is the color.
Fun.
Oh, red and purple. How wonderful. There are plenty red and purple options out there, though. Yeah. There's one called Too Tasty. Came out of Burpee this year. It's like a plum. It's a red with a blue anthocyanin cap, the same anthocyanin that's in blueberries, which is all over the tomato world right now. And there's a beautiful one out of Row 7 Seeds. If you don't know Row 7 Seeds, take a look. Chef-driven seed company out of New York. They have a tomato called Midnight Roma that is quite extraordinary. Mostly blue, Roma-shaped, red base. Phenomenal. So there's lots of that combination out there, and I'm kind of excited to know that it's sort of hitting the grocery market with blue, and I don't doubt we'll see more of that.
A lot of the it used to be that store-bought tomatoes had no taste,
right? Exactly,
or tasted like cardboard. But the new marketing plan for some of these tomato companies is to market tomatoes that taste good.
And what a concept,
thing, right?
right?
I mean, imagine that.
Yeah.
And look, I think, Heirlooms did that. Heirloom Emphasis did that. The world, we tomato growers, eaters, all that, said we want great tasting tomatoes. supply and demand. This is the industry. This is what they listen to. So I'm really happy to. And you're right, it's happening.
What was the motto? We want tomatoes that taste good, not just tomatoes that ship well.
That was the motto.
Exactly. Well, look, I just mentioned Row 7 Seeds. That's their mantra. They went to seed purveyors and said, hey, we really would like a blah blah vegetable that tastes good. And these seed developers said, well, we've never been asked that before.
Hey, we're gonna have to take a break. When we get back from the break, we'll wrap up chatting with Scott Daigre with Tomatomania. Get you all the information you need to know about his program and tomatoes.
Yep, you betcha. Garden America, Brian Main, John Bagnasco, Tiger Palafox. Thank you, Scott, for being there. It's a stumbly morning for me. It's the rain, it's the weather. Anyway, going to take a break, brought to us by Fertilome, a break for Biz Talk Radio. Stay with us. Back from the break, Garden America, Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live. Tiger, going to toss to you as we slowly wrap things up with Scott. Very popular show this morning as we continue to talk about tomatoes.
Yeah, so again, Scott's program, Tomatomania, is a great way to bring a lot of varieties to areas all around California and other places as well, because I think people travel for your program. I mean, it's one of the rare locations where you can go and see 200 or more varieties of, tomatoes, and like we say, find something for everyone.
That's right.
And you do your work in growing, as we mentioned. You have test facilities where you grow out a lot of these varieties, so you can get the track record on, how they grow, where they grow, what they taste like, all of that stuff. Tomatomania.com. I posted the link for the website.
Thank you.
Lots of good information. Scott has a book about tomatoes on it if you're looking for more information as well. What do you have wrapping up the year for you? You have a few more events coming up through April, right?
We do, Tiger. We're busy this week, and you know that we've evolved into events, and then we were a pop-up. Now we kind of are a stay-a-while in some locations. So I have 2 stores open right now that will remain open through into May, and then we have 3 events next week, 2 of which will become stores and do the same. So we do this series of pop-ups. So last week, to your question, next week at Moore Park at Underwood Family Farms in Southern California, a popular destination. We will do Moore Park and Somas locations for them. Then we go and work with the Starter Farm up in Santa Ynez, one of my test farms, and Mark will do an event up there with a floral friend of his or business up there. So we have 3, and then Moore Park and Somas will become stores that will host and that will restock through probably mid-May. So yes, we evolve, we keep growing, and next week is the last weekend of our events per se.
Okay. And then you just get to kick back and relax, right, for the rest of the year?
Oh, sure. That's what we do, Tiger, all the time. Then the hard part starts. You got to grow this stuff, you know?
Yeah,
we work hard at it. We know everybody else out there does. We're so grateful for the support and just everybody joining us in this great pursuit. So we love it. And I need about 10 farmers to support me in the summer. So if you're out there and you're a farmer, talk to me.
Yeah.
In Southern California, I want more and more test farms because we always want more and more tomatoes.
And it's such a great community online you have developed. So if you haven't yet, reach out to Scott's Facebook, where there's great chat, there's great information, videos, and things like that they share via that. And if you want to get, they have a newsletter as well. Get some information, sign up for their newsletter.
Thank you, I appreciate that. We love sharing.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Scott. Enjoy the off weekend. Is it raining? Where are you at right now? Are you up in Ojai or where are you?
I am in Ojai at this moment.
Is it rainy up there?
In Ojai. We're traveling back and forth. We opened the Ojai event or the Ojai partnership on Thursday, so that was this week's activity. So we'll be in Ojai through June, and again hitting the road and putting tomatoes in the ground. That's what we're going to be doing.
All right. Well, you take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Always fun, gentlemen. Thank you. Have a great spring.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
Thank you much. I believe his energy really carried the show.
Energy from Scott.
I mean, it uplifts everybody, and I think when you have a guest like that is so passionate and so enthusiastic, it brings out a lot in our listeners who then want to ask questions, and it touches a nerve, a very positive nerve, and he brings it, no doubt.
Well, Carla says that she's motivated to turn her attention towards growing tomatoes again.
Yeah, see?
Good for her.
Absolutely. Now, I know there were a few that we missed, a few questions.
Yeah, one was, well, actually, there were two from Rick. One is he wanted to know what happened to grafted tomatoes, and they're still out there. If Rick's in, a lot of stores in Oregon carry those, and Oregon's right next to Idaho, so if you make a trip over there, you might check ahead of time. But you can mail order those also from, let's see, there's two companies on the East Coast. There's Young's, Jungs,
Okay.
Young's Tomatoes, and then our Young's seed company. And then on the West Coast, Territorial Seed Company sells grafted tomato plants. You can order those through the mail from them. And then let's see, Rick had, what was his other question? Oh, do tomatoes like companion plants? Rick, if you go to Amazon.com, you can, I'm sure, find a used copy of Louise Riot's book, Tomatoes Love Carrots.
Oh, yeah. We have discussed that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she wrote two. She wrote Roses Love Garlic and Tomatoes Love Carrots, and they're both books about companion planting. So
check Connie's comment about Jungs. Right below Tanya.
Randolph, Wisconsin.
How about that?
Thank you, Connie.
You know, our listeners are so smart. We did a survey about a year ago, and our listeners and viewers, Tiger, of all the intelligence of people who listen to radio and podcast,
They ranked really high.
they ranked top three.
Yeah.
Top three. This year, we're hoping for maybe number one and number two. So there you go.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you.
Kevin says that he grows the Cherokee-type tomatoes up in Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
You know, when I think it was Scott in Pennsylvania had asked for recommendations for the coast, and Scott Daigre pointed out that you have to look at your own microclimate, because if you're right on the coast, the days aren't usually warm enough to produce good tomatoes. So you have to use tomato varieties that are short season and will develop under cooler climates. And the beefsteak type tomatoes usually like hot weather to develop. So, and they need a little bit longer season. So if you're growing big, huge tomatoes, you've got to take that into account. So it just depends on where you are.
You kind of always, what was it? The general rule, if it had a Russian name that would grow well in that area. Was that
you're
what it
talking
is?
about stuff like Stupichka? And,
Yeah.
Well, Stupichka is a Czech name.
right, but I'm saying as far as cool season tomatoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually if it had a name like Siberia
Yeah.
Exactly.
or some Canadian ones like Manitoba.
Woolly mammoth was a very, very big variety at one time.
But yeah, those tomatoes were developed in cool climates.
San Francisco fog.
Yeah. Well, San Francisco fog is doesn't have good flavor. Let's put it that way. I saw a T-shirt one time with a tomato and a circle around it with a line through it that said, "Friends don't let friends plant San Francisco fog."
Oh man.
Is it a bigger tomato?
No,
It's just a very watery.
It's just nothing to it.
not much flavor. It does produce, but you might as well go to the
But I was gonna say,
supermarket and
produce
buy a
for who and
tomato.
what?
Yeah.
It's
If it doesn't
it
taste
looks
good.
like a tomato.
Yeah.
Oh. I was trying to look up to see why tomatoes and peppers and potatoes are edible, but then, like we were talking about earlier in the program, but like there's a lot of solanums that are not edible.
Right.
I couldn't find any like definitive answer as far as like, oh, well, these plants have this and these plants don't have that. Because you had mentioned a lot of people think that the tomato plant is poisonous, but that's not not true. But it's just interesting that, right? I mean, they're all solanums, so they all have that, root of where they're from and what kind of plant they are, but some are poisonous and some are not. You just roll the dice, I guess.
Well, I don't know if I'd roll the dice. I mean, I would eat a tomato, but I would not eat nightshade.
Here, Tiger, let's play Russian roulette.
Yeah.
Let's roll the dice and see what happens.
Only if it's with Stupichka.
Well, we were talking about the colonel in 1820 that ate the tomatoes in public, and And 2,000 people showed up to watch him eat tomatoes.
Yeah, they wanted to see him die.
Yeah, they were
Usually,
thinking,
you know.
yeah.
That's exactly.
It's like a one-man gladiator event.
Sure.
A one-man gladiator.
That's pretty good. Hey, we just got a severe weather advisory.
Did we?
Aerial flood advisory for Scripps Ranch in effect until 11 o'clock this morning. So that's on your way home, John, and that's in my neck of the woods.
Did you bring your boat down?
That's where you live.
That's where I live, yeah. So do be careful out there, whatever's happening weather-wise.
You're like, I feel like I've seen it recently. Has the ceanothus started to bloom?
Oh, in full bloom.
Okay.
Yeah, full bloom.
So ceanothus, for those of you who don't know, is our Californian lilac. It's a native shrub here in Southern California. And it has a purple blue flower.
Well, you know, by us, Shannon and I were taking a walk yesterday, and we were noticing all the different colors.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's light blue, there's dark blue, there's even white.
Whites.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's one of those plants that nobody knows it's there in our hillsides and on our mountains and all that.
It just kind of blends in with the scenery.
Right.
It really does. And then it blooms, and you're like, whoa, it's all blue. It's all white. It's all light blue. And, you know, John lives in this area where he overlooks this, would you call it a canyon valley?
Yeah.
And, you know, I could just imagine both slopes got to be covered with.
We're going to take a break. We'll talk about John's incredible scenery and his views when we come back from the break. It is Garden America. Back after these messages on Biz Talk Radio.
I don't know.
Garden America back from the break. We hope you had a good break as we continue trying to get to as many questions as possible on this rainy tomato day here in San Diego, brought to us by Fertilome, broadcasting from the iHeart Studios here in San Diego, John.
Yeah, and Rick, was it Rick that had the question regarding the ground cherry?
Yes.
Yeah, so he was asking a question about is a ground cherry in the Solanum family, and that's just the crazy thing. So Solanum, you have potatoes, and then you have peppers, you have tomatoes, and then Solanum's also there's a plant called a datura, which is not Brugmansia. I mean datura is datura. I'm trying to think of what the
Local weed.
Local weed?
Loco weed.
Loco. Oh yeah, it's because you go crazy if you eat it.
Yeah.
but it looks like
angel's
an angel's trump.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to
But
say.
datura is the upright one. Brugmansia is the one that hangs down.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And also a lot of people will see that in seed form. That was a big seed to buy for the high school kids and try to get their head right off of it was moonflower. Moonflower's datura. And so those are all in that grouping. Did you find out, was the ground cherry also
it's in the nightshade family.
Okay. So yeah.
Right. And
Yeah,
you were talking about the one that I gave you, which was a tall one. It's called Cape Gooseberry.
Yeah.
Cape Gooseberry. And that one tastes really good, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it was great.
I think mine died. Somebody was pulling weeds on the hill and pulled that out.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But they come up from seed really easy. If you have one come up from seed, do you still have it?
Yeah. It's planted right by a lime tree, so I know exactly where it's at.
It's got to be nice taking these tomatoes home that John gave us and putting them right out in the rain.
They're not tomatoes. They're
I'm
roses.
sorry, roses. See, it's been a tomato.
It's a completely different family.
Day. So you're saying roses and tomatoes are different?
Please
Much
don't
different.
eat the rose.
Please don't.
Flower.
No, basically they're putting the roses out in this nice weather, the rain, right off the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah, especily since they were just
Divided.
cut in half with a
Just
saw
savagely
yesterday.
ripped apart from their family.
Do you know, I was pulling weeds out of pots, fertilizing, the collection of the roses you and I went and got in Sebastopol. And while I was doing that, I was dividing excessive. Oops.
There's your
what was
notification.
that? Time to go.
Flood warning in Fallbrook.
What was I saying?
You
Oh,
were
yeah, I
out
was
there dividing.
right.
and-
Right.
And you know how many roses I got off that collection just in the weeks I've been dividing them? Over 100.
So you created another 100 roses to your original number
Right.
compared to your original. Wow. Yeah. But they're so now.
Most
you
of
gonna
them
do
will
with-
be for the auction.
I was going to say those
Yeah.
auction roses.
Right.
Those are ones that. Was there any of them that you kind of are dividing because there are only one or two left? Kind of a roses.
Well, there's one that's really rare called Dr. John Snow and was not doing well, and it was in a 20-gallon container.
Whoa.
I know. That's
And
what I
still not
thought.
doing
Plenty
well.
of room.
And it's not easy to move.
No.
So I cut that up into 4 pieces, and I actually have one in this year's auction.
Okay.
Carla, by the way, the auction is the 13th and the 14th of April.
The weekend before we leave. for
Yeah,
Costa
and if you
Rica.
go to savetheroses.com or ccrsauction.com, you can see the list of roses. And Carla said that if you're going to be there, let her know she wants to meet you in person.
Next year, that's the big one, John.
Next year, you got the date marked down, right?
I'm committed.
Okay.
Well, I've been committed many ways in my life, but I'm committed to this as well.
To an actual event there. Yeah.
You know, John's like well, this might be a bad analogy. He's talking about how he's divided his roses and he got 100 out of the original 100. Kind of what drug dealers do, right? They step on their product.
Oh, yeah,
and-
they
and
cut it down.
They cut it down. Now they have that much more to sell for,
That's what
for
John's
retail.
doing. John's addiction.
Yeah, John's addiction.
is,
There's a group
getting
called
more.
Jane's Addiction, John.
I remember Jane's Addiction. Hey, what, I'm trying to think. Somebody had a song called Jane, Lady Jane.
Oh, that's the Rolling Stones.
Rolling Stones, yeah.
Lady Jane.
Yeah.
Bum, 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 bum.
Uh,
Lady Jane. Listen to it, Tiger. See, every week we send Tiger home with a song.
Yeah, a little
Lady Jane.
homework to do with music and movies.
An unusual, very slow tempo song by the Stones.
For Christmas, Tiger gave each of us a bag of
Yes.
ocean forest potting soil,
Mm-hmm.
which, since you've given me that bag,
Okay.
I still have 80% of it left.
So do I.
Whoa, you're
So do
saving
I.
it, huh?
But meantime,
You could easily use all that
since
up.
Christmas, I have bought 40 bags of Happy Frog.
Yeah.
So that's how much I value your
Yeah,
ocean
exactly. I was
forest.
gonna
It's
say,
just
like,
for something special.
Super special.
Ex-
You know what?
Exactly.
You're right, because there's nothing more devastating than using the very last bit of that soil when
Yeah.
you're all said and done, because it is such a good soil.
I love it.
Well, the reason I bring it up is that I was going to ask you how much you sell those for at your store, if you
Oh, what are
if
they
you
now?
know.
$19?
20 bucks, right?
Because Rick says that he just bought a bag
Uh-huh.
up in Idaho,
Okay.
and he paid $33 for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it.
It's called
Yeah.
profit.
Well,
Pure profit.
Well, you know, one of the issues with soils is, and I know Fox Farm, it's what they call co-packing. So, you know, in order to make things less expensive in areas, they would find a producer of soils that would bag their product closer to where their
Local,
market
more
is,
local.
so they don't have to ship it.
Right. Okay.
And because ocean forest is such a, how would you say it, proprietary product, they don't do a lot of co-packing, meaning they don't
Right.
allow people to produce it.
No, it's definitely a premium potting soil.
So therefore, it's being shipped from California to Idaho, which probably drives up that cost quite a bit. But as you mentioned, I highly doubt they probably have a comparable product up there in Idaho, unless some other soil producer was up there putting all the things that Fox Farms puts in ocean forest, which is probably kind of a tough thing to do in Idaho, especially since they're a little bit more inland. A lot of the products come from byproducts of the fish industry and the kelp industry here in California. So
now, what about Fertilome? Do they have?
yeah, they actually,
and those would be in independent nurseries around the country, right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
they do a big amount of soil in the southern Midwest. So I don't even know about Idaho, though. They might not be there
Might take-
either. But that would be something. I know that they have some pretty good premium
They have
potting soil
an
products.
extensive line of products too, though, right?
Oh
Tiger?
yeah, all kinds of soils, fertilizers, and pest controls, herbicides, and all that kind of stuff that you can find in your independent.
So do what you
garden
can
center.
to support Fertilome, a great sponsor of ours, Fertilome.
Yeah.
Fertilome.
And a matter of fact,
Can you use it in a sentence?
Yes. I support Fertilome because I think their product is better than anybody else. It's like a sixth grader trying to put that into a sentence.
Well, just yesterday we used a liquid product from there called Humic. It's a liquid humus additive for the soil, and it's because I was at a property in Encinitas where they were just having really poor plant health issues, and it's because it was a new build development, and the soil that was there was not very good.
Yeah, they just throw soil in there, right?
John would appreciate this, where like a ligustrum, a Texas privet, which is probably one of the most toughest nailed plants out there. Right. When it's not looking good and it's getting water, it's getting sunlight, you have a soil issue. So we used the Humic product in their soil, and we should see some results in a few weeks on that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Prior to the last break, you were talking about California lilac, ceanothus.
Oh, yeah.
And I was surprised when we went to England, not when you and I went, because that was summer, but the time before we went, it was spring. We went to the Chelsea Flower Show. I was surprised at all the California natives in England. It's something that we take for granted because they're growing wild. But there was California lilacs, there was ceanothus, there was frumentodendrons.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't think of that stuff growing there, but it does.
I thought that they were a completely different climate than us. And then in the summertime when we went there, just to see like what you said, all the same plants that we have here also there, blew my mind. And it just kind of shows you that just because it's drought tolerant doesn't mean sometimes that it can't handle the water. If it has more water, it actually will be okay.
Right. Not ceanothus. You taught me about ceanothus because they grow fast.
Yeah.
My son planted on the side of the hill behind his house, planted ceanothus, and they grew, I would say, quickly to about 6 feet tall by 6 feet wide. And then bloomed, and then during the summer we turned the water on and everyone died.
Hates the summer watering.
We're going to take a break. We have one more segment coming up, so those on Facebook Live, get those questions, comments in. Those on Biz Talk Radio, thank you for joining us. It is Garden America. Happy Easter weekend to you. All right, we have returned from the break. This is it, final segment as we continue. Those on Biz Talk Radio, pre-recorded show from last week. We're enjoying Easter weekend, so a few more questions to get to, and we'll keep on rolling until the end of the show, guys.
Yeah, Carla is asking about reusing soil in a pot for tomatoes and wants to ask Daigre if she puts humic acid in, would that help?
Okay, so
So could you extend the life of the soil, I guess,
yeah,
right?
And I would say yes, because if you add organic fertilizer and humic acid, you're going to recharge that soil.
But both are necessary.
Right. Because if you just put the humic, the humic needs something to latch onto, which is the fertilizer. So you need to put them both to activate it. And humic activates existing fertilizers in the soil. And if you're trying to take soil that's basically zero and make it into something, you need to add both. You can't just add one or the other.
Because they work off each other.
Correct.
Okay.
But then also the idea of why you don't use soil for tomatoes year after year doesn't always have to do with the lack of nutrients. That's definitely what some people say. Oh, move your tomatoes around
every 2 or 3 years or something.
Because
right?
it needs to recharge. Right. But like we said, you can easily recharge that with some new soil, a little bit of fertilizer, a little bit of humic acid, and it'll be fine. It's more for the disease and the nematode is why you move tomatoes around. Vasilium wilt, nematodes, and what else is there? Or just diseases in general, right?
It's Fusarium blight and Verticillium wilt, and you called it Fusilium, so you took both with one name. That's good.
He's trying to keep the show moving along here. So I know a lot of people are under the impression that after 2 or 3 years, all the nutrients are, sucked out of the soil.
Right, which is true if you don't replenish it.
Right.
But you could easily replenish soil with humic acid, organic fertilizers, just a little bit of additional compost or earthworm castings. you can really do a good job of recharging any bad soil or sterile soil, so to speak. But that's not the only reason why you move tomatoes around.
Kevin wants to do another show from my house.
Okay.
And wants you to show the rose garden.
We should do that
So
probably.
we will. But we're getting into like June, May,
Well, no,
June.
I mean,
June's too late.
Too late. No,
May?
it's
When we
more
get
like
back?
May.
We get back
Yeah.
from Costa
Yeah.
Rica.
I would
Probably
say
when we get back.
And the weather will be nice. Should be nice.
If you're interested in hearing what I have to say about roses, tomorrow, if you mark down hashtag Rose Chat Podcast, you can listen to the podcast I did with Teresa Byington. And the whole show's just talking about roses.
Yeah, we can take the
you were
cameras.
so happy, probably.
Yeah, we can take the cameras around John's roses, around his property, and give you a good look at what's going on out there.
Yeah, she told me that, she was thanking me and the show's coming to an end. And I said, well, what am I going to do with this next 2 hours of notes in front of me?
Right?
Where did you do it from? Did you do it from your library? Just sitting in your library?
I actually did do it from my library.
Yeah, it's a good spot to do it from.
That's something.
Yeah.
Never a reason to leave your house anymore, John, except to come to the show here.
How long were you on the program with her for?
I think it was an hour show.
An hour show?
Yeah, maybe 45 minutes. I'm not sure. Once they start talking.
That's it. You're in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you won't believe this, Brian. A couple times I went off on a tangent.
What? You?
She brought me back, though. She had an outline.
Brought you back down to earth. Tanya would love to see John's place. We're going to get that set up. We're going to do it.
Yeah.
Tanya's been to my place. Hasn't changed much, Tanya. Not Tanya. I'm sorry. Carla.
Carla, this is Tanya.
Yeah.
Tanya wants to see your place.
Tanya, you are invited anytime. Rose Chat, the name, yes. Hashtag Rose Chat Podcast. Rose Chat, I think, might all be one word, but I'm not sure. But if you Google Rose Chat Podcast with Teresa Byington, you'll find it.
Yeah, it'll come up real quick.
She also has a list of podcasts that she's done with other people in the industry, and she did one a couple weeks ago with, what was his name? Our guest from last week. Was it Andy?
Green?
Oh, Dave Green.
Andy Green, right?
Andy Green? Dave Green?
Dave Green.
We know for sure.
Andy Green is a manager. Used to be the manager for the Padres.
Oh, well, we know for sure it wasn't Dave Green because you said that Randy Green is actually what it was.
Oh.
Is it Randy Green?
Yeah.
Isn't that
See,
amazing?
it's kind of like Randy Andy.
We're 1 week removed from a guest, and each of us has a different take on what his name is or was.
Well, anyway, she also did an interview with Randy Green, and we both mentioned how unique his marketing idea or Heirloom Roses marketing idea was for sending, have a subscription to beneficial insects, and they send them out when it's time to put them in your garden.
And it's not just ladybugs and praying mantis.
It's actually, I don't think there are any ladybugs
there
or
were
praying
not.
mantis.
Yeah, and,
right.
And he was actually expressed a bit of caution on using ladybugs because, now there's an issue with some specific ladybug varieties and, this and that.
Right.
So diversifying your beneficial insects is a good idea.
Yeah, they're poison ladybugs, and they attack you when you're sleeping.
Goodness gracious.
Oh, well, maybe not. Maybe that was a dream I had last night.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing I was most interested in.
We just went viral. Poisonous
No,
ladybugs attacking you while you sleep.
I've got what John has this thing where he has to be careful what he filters before he says it.
You would think
I'm going through that right now myself. I better not say anything. Just let it be.
But it's funny because he has that filter, but then things just still. I'm wondering what got filtered out.
Okay, here's the thing. You know how you have to change filters now and then they get dirty?
Yeah.
Whenever something slips out, his filter's dirty.
Yeah, he's gonna.
When he cleans it, it doesn't slip out.
I've told you guys many times that I probably only say half of what comes into my mind.
I get it. But you know what? I think the other half of what you don't want to say.
I can see it in your eyes, too.
I think the other half.
So Kevin says he got his Colette package as well. Very excited for the trip. We got a couple of questions for Kevin, maybe, pertaining to Costa Rica.
Yeah, is everything all good with your packet? All the information
correct? How does your packet look, Kevin? Let us know.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I think we got about a minute. We got to wrap things up. John, go ahead.
How does your packet look? Hey, Carla wanted
packet.
Okay.
Carla wanted to point out that Heirloom Roses has free shipping this weekend.
What?
There you go. Free shipping. Heirloom Roses.
If you go to their site, you can read about the insect sign up too.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you have a great Easter weekend. Those on Facebook Live.
Happy Easter, and thanks for all the listeners that wished us a happy Easter.
Absolutely, yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, and those on Biz Talk Radio, Easter was last week. We hope you had a good Easter as well. Tiger, you can stay if you want to. The rest of us, we're going to say goodbye. Enjoy the rain, but be careful if you're driving in the rain. For the entire crew, I'm Brian Main, John Bagnasco, Tiger Palafox. Happy Easter. Enjoy your weekend. Have a great weekend. We'll do it again next week right here on Garden America. Take care.